Hello, and thank you for joining me. This particular Bright Talk, it's one that has deep personal meaning for me. Professionally, I was fortunate. I grew up in a company that had strong organizational culture. In the 16 years I worked there, that culture survived 3 changes in ownership, 3 CEOs, and 5 different VPs in the division where I worked. And during those 16 years, my division doubled in size, and the competitive landscape changed dramatically across our entire industry. At the time, I took the stability and the uniqueness of that workplace culture for granted. I didn't fully appreciate those advantages we had as a result of our core values and the way they unified us as a team. I didn't have the education yet to fully understand how those values and that culture translated into making us an employer of choice and a formidable brand and a developer of talent. But now if I look back 15 years later, I can connect the dots and I can see why so many of us who worked there together have been very successful in our careers. We were part of something special, and we were inspired and challenged in that environment in a way that brought out the best in each one of us. Since then, I've also worked in a Fortune 500 company that collapsed and dissolved. That dissolution of workplace culture preceded the company's demise. Ego-driven leaders competed internally to get their own way. There was a certain sense of anything goes in the desperation to hit budget targets. Change there was poorly managed, and communication simply broke down. The culture became one of looking out for number one. So I learned then that culture in the workplace can change overnight when people at the top aren't committed to it. And I've seen this happen since then, too, in client companies where changes at the top don't include a consideration for the organization's values and culture. And that's why I decided to host this Bright Talk. I'm Deb Calvert, author of the bestseller Discover Questions, Get You Connected, and of the award-winning blogs Connect to Lead, Connect to Win, and Connect to Sell. Based on that sentence alone, you can probably guess that connections are truly important to me. So I'd be honored if you'd connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Google+. You've got my handle there on screen along with my email address. My company is People First Productivity Solutions. We build organizational strength by putting people first. I work as an executive coach, meeting facilitator, trainer, and consultant to help people improve their connections and to help organizations improve their people practices. Workplace culture and values are important components in a people-first environment. Well, I've been a corporate HR director, and I've worked with many HR, L&D, and OD professionals since opening my company in 2006. And my talk today is based on my observations over the past decade and on recent research that suggests we need to shine the light on this topic. If you're new to Bright Talk, I'd like to point out 2 important features for you. First, be sure to notice the link called Attachments. I believe that's in the upper left corner of your screen. I've included some bonus resources there for you, and I'll tell you more about those later. And second, you can subscribe to this channel, and you can get more content each month from me if you'd like to. Bright Talk makes it really easy to stay on top of what's new and what's relevant specifically for you. Okay, so enough of the commercial stuff. Back to the business at hand, workplace culture. Probably a fair question to ask, well, what is workplace culture anyway? Because that's probably the best place to start. To many outside of OD, it seems that workplace culture is vague and mysterious and perhaps even elusive. But actually, workplace culture is very simple, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated. Workplace culture is what you see when you walk in and observe the way people treat each other. When you look at the norms for how things get done and the pace and cadence of the work. It's the vibe, the atmosphere, the feeling of being there that reveals the culture of any workplace. As a consultant, trainer, and coach, I visit a wide variety of workplaces. And culture is something that begins to reveal itself in just the first 10 or 15 minutes of a visit. It's not mysterious. It's not hidden. It's not even hideable. It's all around at all times. And I think that's why it matters so much. Every organization has its own unique style and its own way of doing things, its own culture. No two organizations have the same work culture. It's the culture of an organization that makes it distinct from other workplaces. At the heart, the foundation of a culture, you'll find beliefs and ideologies, principles and values of that organization or of the work group. The culture of the workplace controls the way employees behave amongst themselves as well as with people outside the organization. The culture decides the way employees interact at their workplace. A healthy culture encourages employees to stay motivated and engaged. And the culture of an organization includes certain practices that guide employees and give them a sense of direction. The organization's culture, it also gives employees common ground. It's the culture itself, founded in the values, that provides guidance for making decisions and determining how to approach work tasks. With all of that, then the culture of the workplace unites the employees. Employees come into the workplace with different perspectives, with different experiences, attitudes, priorities. So it's this culture, when they come together, that gives them a sense of unity. On top of all that, the work culture does promote healthy relationships with clear and common understanding about how things are to be done. Well, naturally, there's less conflict and there's more accountability to colleagues. Feeling unified, being able to work in one accord, that creates a sense of belonging. And this, as you know, has an impact, a profound impact on employee commitment and engagement, which in turn positively impacts results. So those are some of the positives, the benefits of having a strong workplace culture internally, but there are also some external benefits to having a good, strong workplace culture. Included in those external benefits, well, the brand of the organization. A work culture goes a long way in creating the brand, the image of the organization. The work culture gives the identity to the organization, and then the organization becomes known by that identity that forms from its culture. Many employers of choice have earned that designation and the ability to attract and retain top talent because their workplace culture is more desirable than that of their competitors. And furthermore, it's the culture of the organization that extracts the very best out of every team member. Higher commitment, engagement, and accountability will then yield additional discretionary effort, which translates into higher productivity levels, improved customer satisfaction, and both top-line and bottom-line growth. So, incidentally, if you want to learn more about those links between employee engagement and how it impacts retention, productivity, customer satisfaction, top-line growth, and profitability, please take a look at another webinar. I don't want to go off on that tangent here, but there's another webinar for you that I've recorded here on Bright Talk. It's called The Business Case for Leadership Development. But all of those things are certainly driven by workplace culture and contributors and formation builders of workplace culture, so it goes hand in hand. Now, many of you are already familiar with the work of MIT professor Dr. Edgar Schein. He explains workplace culture like this. He says that you have these three layers, and way down deep, there are assumptions and beliefs. You can't necessarily see them except that they are revealed in the things that people do every day. They're embedded, they run very deep, and they are the roots of how people interact with each other. Higher up, you can see what people are saying, the values they espouse, the words that you put up on the wall, for example. And then, first and foremost, the thing that people observe in the day-to-day at all times is that they're surrounded by artifacts across the organization that are the business processes, and they are the structures, the policies, the day-to-day elements in the workplace that reveal what the workplace culture really is. A little bit more about that. The culture then is observed in these artifacts. These are some of those observable artifacts in a culture that I've put on screen for you now. Because no matter what the espoused beliefs and values are, the actions that are demonstrating those beliefs and values are what give evidence of the actual culture. And it's these artifacts, these observable elements of the culture that influence everybody in the culture. So that's why HR could never, ever be expected to act alone as keepers of the culture. Think about this for a moment. Right? The team members in HR, they're not the people who others are watching and emulating. And no matter how HR acts, the people that others will model their own behaviors on are those who sit in the C-suite and those whom they report to in their own department and the coworkers and colleagues that surround them every day. And sure, HR, of course, might be involved in hiring and in candidate selection, but HR doesn't do that alone. Candidate selection is seldom determined by HR alone, so it's impossible for HR alone to screen candidates based on culture or values fit. And HR, unfortunately, isn't the one that's going to be front and center. HR is the part of the organization that's furthest removed from the company's mission. And that even applies to companies whose mission statements include a center on employees. This is because day-to-day supervision is where that mission lives or dies, not with HR. HR can offer lots of training and coaching and support in onboarding new employees and in equipping supervisors with soft skills, in leadership development, and a whole lot more. But like the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. HR can promote the culture, but frontline managers and senior executives can completely undercut all that training if they don't reinforce the training or don't consistently demonstrate in their own actions what it is that HR is teaching. Culture starts with and stays strong when leaders make certain choices. Let me give you a few examples of that. Okay, so top-down decisions and messages force choices like these. You would compare the column on the left to the column on the right, row by row. It would be a choice like this, for example. Are we as a company really focused on short-term results, do whatever it takes today to make the profitability that we've said we need to make, the expense cuts we need to make, the revenue production we need? Are those short-term results the priority, or is it the long-term welfare of our customers, our employees, and our company that we are truly focused on? And it would be decisions like this. Are we about individual success, or do we prize a team environment and we measure the success of individuals by the success of the team? Do we focus on siloed departments or an integrated collaborative approach to business? Do we have a family environment here, or do we have a corporate environment where things are hierarchical and perhaps bureaucratic and there's a process for everything that we do? These are the types of choices, and it has less to do with what's being said and much more to do with what's actually being done. What's being done includes what budget is allocated to something, and where's the measurement, and what is it that we're actually celebrating. And HR doesn't get to make those determinations. HR, therefore, cannot be held, it's unreasonable to hold HR accountable for corporate culture. Since culture is top-down, it's not uncommon to see culture change when a founder or a strong CEO steps down. Maybe you've seen this happen. Maybe you've seen that the founder's impact is profound. And as long as the founder is in place, there is a culture, and everybody knows exactly what that culture is all about. And they can point to that founder, and they can say, that's what it looks like. That's what we do here. So because of that, the core group around the founder, the executive team around the founder, they do share that vision. They do extend that culture. They emulate the founder. They codify what it is that's going to be happening in practice, and that lasts for a generation or two. But eventually, outsiders come in. The company perhaps is growing, and you need that outside support, that additional expertise. But as that happens, the culture diminishes and perhaps even dissolves. Mergers and acquisitions can impact a culture in much the same way. And company growth, as positive as that may be, will have an influence on the culture, which needs to be managed. Great companies often lose their culture as they expand. And it happens because they are failing to protect the very thing that got them to a point where they could grow and thrive. They undervalue and therefore they neglect their own culture, the lifeblood of the company. And it may or it may not be deadly to an organization, but it is painful. It's painful to experience a culture collapse and to witness the casualties. People, values, customers, suppliers, even competitive differentiation that gets lost when a culture is accidentally abandoned. So if you're in an organization where the culture rests with one or just a few core group members, you'll need to plan ahead. And this is a place where HR can help to spotlight this and to help in the planning strategically for how you will either preserve or evolve your culture. Unmanaged culture change can be very harmful. That's what you want to avoid. Incoming executives will stumble and perhaps fail if they're not in tune with the culture. So don't let them be set up to fail in that way. Okay, so to embed and transmit a desired culture, there are certain things that leaders, not just HR leaders, not just HR employees, but all leaders across the organization need to do. I would like to illustrate this by telling you a story about one organization that has a relatively new CEO. And he is the first CEO who's not a member of the founding family. He was hired for his experience and his abilities to take the company to the next level as a global supplier. And for that reason, he is absolutely the right choice to be able to accomplish that goal. Now, this CEO, when prompted, he can recite the company values. He can say all the right things about why they matter. He really does understand how the dots connect. He can recognize and effectively coach people when they aren't displaying the values, and he can praise people who do. But here's the problem. He doesn't himself do those sorts of things as often as he talks about and rewards and focuses on profitability. And it seems to others in this organization that profitability is now the only thing that matters. So there are frequent conversations around the proverbial water cooler about decisions that were made to boost the bottom line at the expense of values. And in some places, that might be okay. In fact, someday at this company, that might be perfectly fine. When the culture and the values are all about the bottom line, then what he's doing would be no problem. But at this company, the legacy has been to do things in a way that benefits all stakeholders, even when that's meant less short-term profit. And everybody who's been there for any length of time can tell you those stories about how the greater good overrode the profitability. So now, suddenly, and it does feel abrupt, the values are now in conflict with the way the new CEO goes about doing things. What the company does no longer matches how the company says it will operate. And putting those two things in alignment, they matter. They matter greatly because when there are strong values in place at the foundation of a culture, everyone in the organization has clarity about what it looks like to get the right results the right way. So let me give you this little graphic, this box model to help illustrate for you what this might mean, what you could look at. There are results, of course, in any organization. There's a strat plan, there are measurements, there are things that we would call results in any job at any level. And those results are what we tend to focus on. Getting results matters in every job. Well, if we turn people loose and there is no workplace culture, or that workplace culture is confusing, then people might go out and get results by doing whatever it takes to get them. Right, wrong, good, bad. There could be mistakes made in the way that they go about getting those results. So we need a balance, and the culture is often the balancing factor, but it needs to be declared, it needs to be clear and obvious and solid enough to give this direction about the right way to get those results. The right way will be different in every organization, but it does need to be defined. Let me just use an example of a sales operation because that's such an easy one we can all relate to. Obviously, the right results are meeting the sales targets. Every single salesperson has goals or quotas that they're expected to meet. And if there are no parameters about the right way to reach those results, then you might see some things happening. Maybe you'd see, for example, what's happening right now at Wells Fargo, where the right results happened. The people who were selling opened lots of new accounts. That's the result they were measured by. But they did it in the wrong way. Over 5,300 of them did it the wrong way by opening accounts that were bogus. They were getting the results, but they weren't doing them in a way that truly served the business well. So you have four things that could happen. You can be getting the right results, and you can be getting them the wrong way, as in our definition here. You can be getting results and getting them the right way. That would be what we'd all strive for. That's in the upper right-hand corner there. The right results, the right way, gives you the greatest opportunity to succeed for the long term and to be that employer of choice and to have that solid culture where everybody can thrive and where people feel more engaged because they have such clarity about what's expected and how it's expected. Now, if I have a choice going into an organization where the results aren't quite happening over on our left-hand side here, we're getting the wrong results, if the people there are going about doing things the wrong way, they've got the wrong results and they're going about doing things the wrong way, well, that means we have a lot that we have to work on and think about for changing. But I know that if they're getting the wrong results, but they are doing things the right way, whatever that might be as defined by their own organization, there's a better chance that they have success just over the horizon. It's coming. It's in their sights. They're going to get there. The right way, in my opinion, and based on what I've observed, the right way trumps the right results every time because the right way will get you those results and get them to you in a way that is sustainable for the long term. When you think about results, don't put them in a box of their own. Bundle them up together with the way that you'd like to get things done, and let that be a part of your culture, informed by the culture, and a driver of the culture too, at every level from every leader, because it's true that HR simply can't do this alone. In that same company I mentioned just a moment ago, there's an unreasonable expectation. It's coming from the CEO and the executive team. And their expectation, I've heard them say it over and over again, the expectation is for HR to act as the stewards of the culture. Now, by the way, HR in that particular company has a brand new CHRO, and all but one director on the HR team is new to the role in the past 3 years. So problem number one here is that the new people who have never seen the desired culture in operation can't possibly champion it and build it or rebuild it or be stewards of it. But even if that weren't the case, it's unrealistic to delegate this job to any one department. Company culture is everyone's responsibility. It lives and breathes in response to, and as a result of, the decisions and the choices made every single day at the very top. Asking HR to do this is akin to asking them to become the lone voice in the wilderness. At a time when HR is already struggling to earn their seat at the table, foisting this impossible task on them is unfair. Putting HR employees in the role of culture stewards or values police is no different than asking them to roll boulders up the mountain. What's coming back down from the top will push them to the bottom every single time. I've seen it happen over and over again. So let's take a look at not only culture, but values. And when it comes to values, you heard me say, based on Dr. Shine's information, that values are the bedrock of the culture. They are the foundation. So these two things are absolutely integrated. That culture has a foundation in the company's values. And like culture, values will either be deliberate and unifying, or they will be haphazard and they'll vary by individual manager. Strong organizations craft values that unify teams and set the course for how to get things done. Like culture, values absolutely matter. They matter more than ever today as modern consumers have unparalleled access and unparalleled numbers of choices. And values also matter as things like social responsibility attract millennials to companies they respect. So being very thoughtful about your values and understanding that they, in fact, drive the business. They aren't nice to have words on the wall. They're imperatives that bring people into your company as employees and as consumers and customers. They are critical to be able to have and articulate and align with your actual behaviors. And if you're able to infuse your core values into the many, many layers of your business and its operations, then your business's capacity to fulfill its fundamental higher purpose is much greater. Leaders and frontline employees alike find that doing business based on business-aligned core values can give them the conviction and the courage needed to show their brand's value and uniqueness to their customers. Values can drive hiring decisions. Values can build individuals and teams and can make the company stronger in every conceivable way. So selecting specific core values and monitoring how closely those values are being adhered to can literally influence the future of any company. This can influence how customers, employees, and stakeholders perceive the company and its worth. And it's not just enough to select core values and slap them up on the wall. They also do have to be adopted throughout the organization at all levels so they can help drive everything you see there on screen. And when you do this, employees are happier too. The American Management Association found in a recent survey that when people's personal values and their company values were in alignment, their personal lives were more satisfactory and they felt more positive about their professional roles. So generally, it's best if the organization is very clear about its values so that it attracts people who have values that are going to be in sync with the organization's values. Now, company values, they're there no matter what. They're either deliberate or they're accidental. They are there either way. And the only difference then is who controls what they are and how they're expressed. Values, can't say it enough times, values are the foundation of the culture. Those artifacts that serve as evidence of the culture stem directly from the values. For example, if you were at a workplace and you noticed walking paths and loaner bicycles and a company benefits package that included a gym membership, these would all be artifacts that prove a company's commitment to employee health and well-being. And if you observed a workplace with strong safety programs, training programs, metrics about accident prevention, policies that prevented unsafe hazards, you'd be seeing the evidence of a corporate value system that protects the company's most valuable assets, its people. Values in action are, of course, more beneficial to an organization and culture than values on the wall. But HR can't drive values in action. HR isn't there when the accident prevention policies are being enforced by frontline supervisors, or not being enforced, as the case may be. HR can't be everywhere to ensure that people are encouraged to take a walk or on their break to ride that bike, or even to make sure that the break actually gets taken. HR can help design and can provide training and support for values, but this is something that requires an all-in focus if the values are to be taken seriously enough that the right kinds of artifacts will be developed and will take root. What I'm putting on screen for you now, these are the four most common areas of company values, and you can see some examples of these where the focus and the artifacts in some large and well-known companies with well-defined corporate values have deliberately worked to embed the values that they profess. When we think about core values relating to people, for instance, Marriott says, see the good in people and try to develop those qualities. And that's evidenced in their training programs and in the ways that people are so often promoted through many, many ranks of that organization. When it comes to customers and values based on customers, LL Bean provides a great ideal in their stated value to sell good merchandise at a reasonable price, to treat customers like you would your friends, and the business will then take care of itself. And LL Bean has had that value and celebrated that value for many years, and in their recognitions and awards, this is what they focus on, to underscore, to reinforce that particular value. When it comes to products, well, we all know the story of the Post-it note and 3M, where they took a very poor quality adhesive product and turned it into a staple in every office and school that you walk into. And that attitude is based in their product-based value, where they say, the 11th commandment, thou shalt not kill a new product idea. They also say, many great product ideas come from stumbling, but you can only stumble if you're moving. And when it comes to business processes, McKinsey & Company says every member of the firm has a responsibility to question firm decisions that he or she disagrees with. And that approach to business helps them to avoid groupthink and prevents them from making hasty decisions that could be costly. So you can see how those values are playing out in each of these examples, these companies and their approach to business. But if you looked at your company, what would you say are the artifacts, the evidence of your company's values? And you also have to take that question to the next level. What would you like for those artifacts to be? What evidence would you hope people would be seeing so that they would readily be able to identify what your values are? And then, next step, you've got to ask, who is it then? Who would need to be involved in making that become a reality? And it's not HR alone. Now, this goes without saying, but there are numerous examples of what goes wrong when people at the top think values are somehow for everyone else. Kenneth Lay at Enron did not act in accord with the values of his organization. But he's just one example of values and culture being delegated to someone else further down the org chart. And while you can see Enron's mission statement, and you certainly know the story of the debacle that happened here, I suspect that we're seeing something in live time happening right now with that breakdown at Wells Fargo. Imagine firing over 5,000 employees for setting up ghost accounts and charging customers fees for those bogus accounts. Somewhere there was a values breakdown. Where was it? Somewhere from the top to the bottom, and I'm certain, reasonably certain, that no HR team could ever have prevented what happened by policing their values or by being stewards of that culture. The CEO of Wells Fargo, John Stumpf, he's featured on their website. He's quoted there saying, everything we do is built on trust. It doesn't happen with one transaction, in one day on the job, or in one quarter. It's earned relationship by relationship. And the 5 company values explained in detail at Wells Fargo in a 21-page brochure you can download from their website. Their 5 values are people as a competitive advantage, ethics, number 3, what's right for customers, 4, diversity and inclusion, and 5, leadership. Ethics, doing what's right for customers. Leadership, managed in the day-to-day work of senior managers, auditors, branch managers, and others who are somehow allowed behaviors that were not in alignment with those stated values. And that impact on the organization, it's going to be costly. Interestingly enough, Wells Fargo is held up as a model company in the book Good to Great. So something was in place, something was going right. In time, we'll probably learn all about what really happened, and I predict it will be a breakdown in the expectations related to values. With examples like this, hopefully it's easy to see why HR could never and should never be expected to fill in as the values police. So here are just a few questions to help you think about the commitment of your management team to your organization's values. Now, this question is not just for HR. It's not just for a hiring manager. It's a question that every person in every role of any supervision should be thinking about at your company. Would they pass on a candidate who was highly skilled, had a great resume, tons of experience, but was lacking in your company values? And can everyone say, yes, our values, they are defined behaviorally. We know what they look like in action. And because we know what they look like in action, we measure them. Our performance appraisal includes behaviors that are representative of our values. And across the organization, what's the penalty for acting out of alignment, incongruently with your values? If there's not a penalty, then why would people choose to act in accord with your values and in step with your culture? As we consider questions like these, you may not realize that there's a match between your stated values and your actions as an organization. If you realize there's not a match, then there are two possibilities. First, that the company's employees don't understand or embrace those values. And secondly, that the values are not an appropriate expression of what the organization really believes and needs to succeed. So first off, let's just remember what core values are. They should be honest and authentic statements of what's essential to the organization's success. If superb customer service is essential, then that should be a core value. If behaving ethically at all times is essential, make it a core value. If making a profit is essential, well, then that's a core value. Those core values, they shouldn't feel trivial or incomplete. Respect, teamwork, collaboration, maybe those are part of your organization's core values, but those are insufficient all by themselves. Those core values should provide a complete picture of the day-to-day behaviors essential to your success. Don't make those values an empty promise that merely sounds good. Artificial values are pointless. And if there's a mismatch, go back to the drawing board with the executive team and start by defining what it is that the organization needs in order to be successful. Okay, now we've talked quite a bit already about what HR cannot do. Let's shift gears and talk about what HR can and should do to support organizational culture and values. But let's be clear about one thing. HR can't do it alone, but HR certainly can help. In fact, companies are more successful when HR does help. There's a Burson study with HR leaders and HR business partners from companies like IBM, Cisco, Lockheed Martin, Rogers Communications. These are companies that are no strangers to major cultural shifts and M&As. And one thing always stands out, and that is that in every one of those cases, HR plays a role as the advisor, as the coach. They help business leadership, and they help them with high impact to tactically and strategically to think through the culture, to think through the values, to put the right actions behind those values and that culture. And the true value of an HR business partner role seems to be in these abilities to coach, mentor, to be a business advisor, to be a strategist, to help the business understand where the risks and the opportunities lie and how business decisions might reflect the culture and the values. some would lay the blame and the responsibility for fixing a culture at the feet of HR. And that's not fair. HR can be responsible for shining a light on negative cultural behaviors, and HR can build the business case for how to change the culture and why that would benefit the organization's bottom line. And HR can even recommend the tools and the techniques to see it happen. But HR cannot change a negative culture to a positive one in a vacuum. Senior leadership has to be in charge of that. They have to be visibly supporting any type of change. Now, HR can also be a role model. And like it or not, HR is a role model as managers and leaders throughout the company pay attention to what is it that HR leaders are doing. And even though you're not sole keepers of the culture, and you shouldn't be the appointed guardians of the values, you are in a position where you need to understand and champion and model the culture and values. Your own credibility and effectiveness depend on that. HR delivers excellence. Dave Ulrich says this about the HR department and culture. He says that you can deliver organizational excellence in these 4 ways that you see on screen, and you can be an agent of continuous transformation by focusing on your partnering on strategic execution, on delivering that administrative efficiency that helps people to get there, and by championing your employees and their contributions. In addition to that, there are 2 more ways you can have an impact long-term on values and culture. The first is talent management. You can teach people how to hire for values fit. You can educate employees inside the organization about the exemplary behaviors that demonstrate your values. You can help your performance management system to include values and think about how, as you are developing talent, you want to recognize high performers, high potentials around values as much as anything else. And the second way is that you can develop your leaders. By the way, if you'd like to read a case study about one international company's leadership development program and how it was constructed with company values as a cornerstone, check out the Attachments tab. I believe that's in the upper left corner of your screen, and I've uploaded a PDF for you there that gives you the case study. So you'll develop leaders so that they are aware of how important the culture is, that they become the voice of the values and the demonstrators of those values, doing the right things, getting the right results in the right way. And you're developing those leaders who will set the tone for the organization, who are making choices that determine what the culture will look like. They're modeling what they think others should follow, and they're showing employees how to contribute in meaningful ways that represent the values. This sort of purposeful partnering that you will do with the senior leadership team and with managers across the organization, this is what will help you to produce a culture that's the product of the social learning, where the culture fuels itself. And the culture as a group phenomenon is then shared with tacit assumptions at the very core. The deep roots of your culture will be there, and they'll be deliberate. And since culture will then be a source of strength for the whole organization, you'll have executives who are appreciating and celebrating the culture. They won't disregard it. Employees won't be confused. They won't feel disenfranchised. Culture won't be sidelined or treated as a separate entity. It will, in fact, be a driver of the business. Your culture will be the unifying force of your business. We covered a lot of ground there. In summary, I hope I've given you some food for thought if you're trying to be a culture keeper, a values cop, or any other role that treats these living, breathing entities like some sort of HR policy. Make a shift to a role where you are collaborating with and coaching leaders and managers to share responsibility for these drivers of organizational success. If you feel they need some additional support, please keep us in mind. Here at People First Productivity Solutions, we build organizational strength by putting people first. We coach executives about important matters like these. We consult with executive and HR teams to create strategies for improving workforce engagement, and that is often linked to values and culture. Please be in touch with me if you have any questions at all. That's an open invitation. You see my email address, my Twitter handle, our social media connections all on screen. So call me or email me if you'd like to ask a question offline. I'm Deb Calvert. I'm the president of People First Productivity Solutions, and I appreciate your time spent here today talking about this very important topic.